Thank you everybody for joining. Students need help with listening, and that's really what this session is about. I want to talk about different things that are happening while you're listening, and the first of these is bottom-up processing, which is one of two fundamentally different ways that we approach texts as listeners. Bottom-up processing assumes that what we're listening to is constructed from very small pieces, and that by listening to each individual piece and connecting it to the previous piece, then we can get the whole message. In terms of spoken English, the smallest piece will be a phoneme, an individual sound, and sounds can come together and make words, and words come together to make phrases, and phrases come together to make whole sentences and whole conversations. So I can remember really clearly very early on in my first few weeks in Spain, somebody in the street coming to me and saying, "¿Qué hora es?" And I had no idea at all what they'd said. And when the person pointed to my watch, well, I just showed them my watch and they could see the time and they walked away. Later at home, I said to my wife, "This happened," and she said, "Yes, he said, ¿Qué hora es?" And I said, "No, he didn't." And she said, "Well, not like that. It's three words, but they come together and you're not segmenting them out yet." Well, there are still times in Spanish where listening to people on the radio, I find it quite difficult to segment out the words. But this is one of the fundamental sub-skills of listening, that you can hear the continuous flow of sounds and actually segment out the words. And the first question is, how many times should our students be allowed to listen to a recording when we're playing it in class? Perhaps you'd like to type an answer to that in the chat box. 2, twice, 3 or 4, 2 or 3, maximum 3. I would suggest that twice is what happens in exams, and exams are about testing listening. But if we're in class, first we need to teach students to be better at listening before we go on to test them. I would play a recording and typically play it a second time, because the first time really they're just beginning to tune in. But after that I'd say to them, "Would you like to hear the recording again?" And it was my students who would guide me as to how many times they needed to hear the recording. So I'm actually going to say something to you, and I want you to listen and count the number of words you hear. Contractions count as 2 words. Listen and write the number of words in the actual chat box. If she asks, I'll tell her everything. Excellent. Great. Great. And that's what I said. Listening is a very complex issue, and listening in the classroom has to be much more than just testing listening by giving students comprehension questions. Bottom-up processing, which relies on segmentation and recognition, sub-skills that will need separate practice. Listening relies on contextual clues and is best done through anticipation of what we're going to hear. Yes, they'll need to be able to listen extensively for gist, listen for specific information, and listen intensively. But we will also need to pull them out of that listening for content and specifically go back in and listen for language, in order that they become better listeners, in order that we are teaching listening and not testing listening. Did you hear what I said? I hope you did more than hear. I hope you were able to listen, and I hope that it's given you some ideas for what you'll be able to do in your own classes. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope it's been useful.